So keep the Luther comments to a minimum. Ahmed. Can you see anything now? Still sees nothing. What do you got, Frank?
Episode 12.
Hamid?
Hey everybody.
What am I looking for? Memory card.
We will be live here in a minute. Rob is still in makeup.
That could be too.
Does Ahmed have it yet?
Ken got the notification. I don't think you get notifications on your laptop. Refresh the Rob Cosman channel and it should show up there. All right. We're ready to go, Rob, whenever you are.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ahmed, you got it?
Ahmed's on. We can proceed.
Oh, here I didn't do a mic check yet.
We did.
How could you? It wasn't even turned on.
My mic.
So you're mic'd as well?
Mm-hmm. Frick, are we good?
Yep. Video's not on yet.
Oh, we need to have the chisels stuff.
Where are the
they?
chisels? I put them out there.
Cam, turn.
Ken can bring Dad.
Ken, can you grab the Lee Nelson chisels and that plane that we're auctioning off or
I think we're right
raffling
out
off? It's right there on that bench. Yeah.
Cam, turn the video on.
There you go. Oh wait.
Yeah, you're
What
on.
are you sending it in?
1080. It's
'Kay.
fine.
That's what I'm thinking.
All right.
So unorganized.
Uh,
Why don't you let me explain the
Hey, so
raffle while you're...
did you want me to type in the names, like thank people on the chat then too? Rob,
what?
did you want me to thank people in the chat then since we're not doing it?
Say that again?
Did you want me to thank people in the chat then since we're not doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. And if any vet speaks up, make sure I know so I can give him a shout out. Here, Ken. Is anybody going to look at that and say sitting on the garbage can? Yeah. Huh?
Copyright.
Oh yeah. Okay. Go do
Copyright
that.
laws.
I was thinking the other thing.
Sorry.
Oh, I need to bring the.
Jeez.
Are we ready?
We've been live for 4 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go.
Yeah, no thanks to you.
Hey, I've been ready.
I thought you guys were still doing mic checks.
Sorry, everybody, for the delay.
Might as well do the pan now. Save us some of the time. There's kidney stone Frick.
Just got fresh out of the hospital. I did not have kidney stones removed. I had them diagnosed. So, send some prayers my way, please.
Since what?
I said, send some prayers my way.
Send some prayers our way that it's the largest stone ever passed.
Hey, Bob, please send me some stickers. I got some empty space here.
Ken, can you move your chair? I just come through here. This cart, only the
I don't
front
know if you're
wheels
gonna get over
move,
that cord.
and it is a
It was
pain.
a big cord.
All right, that's good, and then I'll move it out of the way. Okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
Pete says we never see Jake. Can you do a selfie?
Pete,
Unlike-
Pete Ambrose,
Yeah.
Super Pete, Super Pete, Super Dave. Are we up and ready?
Wait, yeah, go.
Give me a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, go.
We're good.
What,
Okay.
yeah.
Hi, folks. Welcome. This is 12th Mortise and Tenant night. I got a couple things I want to show you that I think will be of interest. First thing we need to do is we need to explain what we're doing tonight. So you'll look over here and see we have our new T-shirts. They're finally in. This was Angie's color, teal. Right. And my niece Megan, Michaela, I have two, came up with the slogan, which is "Wood Doing Good." Awesome slogan. So, you're welcome to buy a T-shirt.
No, you're not.
No?
Not
We
doing
didn't
it.
get them up? I thought
look at
Luther was
me.
working on it. Ugh. Buy it anyway.
Can we turn the air off?
Yeah, we can turn the air off. So, over here, somewhere, I have a friend who's culling some of his tools, so I'm helping him out. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Lee Nelson chisels.
Quarter, 3/8, half, 5/8,
Quarter,
3/4.
3/8, half, 5/8, 3/4, and 1. And actually, you know what? The work's already been done on them. That one's already polished on the back, as is that one. Oh, look at they all are. Oh, these will be worth even more. Anyway, they're almost brand new. And a Lee Nelson 102.
No, separately.
Oh, yeah, separately. So for every $25 Purple Heart donation, in case you're not familiar with our Purple Heart program, 6 times a year starting in 2020, we bring in 6 combat wounded veterans, and we treat them to a 6-day, very intense hand tool workshop. When I say intense, we're here in the shop from 8 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, Monday to Saturday. This time from now on, we're going Monday to Saturday. And plus, so we cover all their expenses. We cover their airfare, their hotel. We even cover costs of if they have to travel with somebody. We had one guy that couldn't travel alone because of his injuries. So we cover all their expenses, and we send each vet home with somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 worth of tools so they can set up a nice little shop at home and continue to do this. Extremely therapeutic for guys suffering from trauma as a result of battle, PTSD, TBI. So every time, if you go on our page, RobCosman.com, under the Purple Heart, there's how to help, where to donate. And for every $25 donation, whether if you do a $100 donation, that gives you 4. 25 gives you 1. Do the math. We'll put your name in for a drawing at the end of tonight. We're going to do 2 drawings, one for the 102 block plane, and the other one for the set of chisels. And now I'm going to take out of that what I'm paying Mike for the chisels, which is probably 90% of what the new price is, and then everything over that goes directly to Purple Heart, supporting one of our vets, or 2 or 3, for next year. What else do I need to do?
So they have to donate on your page, which I'll put.
Donate on my page. Yeah, don't donate on YouTube. They take way too much. On our page, the only thing we lose is the transaction fee, which is 3% or something like that. So all of that goes directly to the Purple Heart Project.
And then instead of doing shout-outs, we'll just thank him and thank them.
Yeah, we hope there's going to be so many of them. We're not even going to be able to give everyone a shout-out tonight, but Megan's going to take care of thanking you online. So with that done, I think we're covered. I want to show you a couple of things. I've just got back from a wood show. And whenever we go to the wood show, we always go to Mel's Little Slice of Heaven, also known as Exotic Woods in Burlington, Ontario. There's the banner's out there. And Mel probably has the greatest selection of woods of any place that I've ever been, and I've been to a few. And he also has an entire warehouse across the street that's full. So we always go over there, find stuff he forgot he even had. So a couple things I want to show you. Start off with this one. So I have looked high and low for a long time for Macassar Ebony that was going to be wide enough and thick enough for me to make a handle out of. I think it's the prettiest of all the ebonies. It's got blacks and browns and various tan streaks in it. And so there's one I cranked out just to get some idea of what it was going to look like, but it's beautiful wood. It is a beautiful. I think it is the prettiest of all the ebonies. So I thought you might like to see that. Second, this has a bit of a story to it. So in California, hopefully I get this right, in California where they grow walnuts commercially, There's two different types of trees. There's a Claro walnut tree and there's an English walnut tree. And the English walnut tree has the best fruit, best nut, and the Claro walnut has the best root system. So what they do is they plant the Claro walnut and then they graft in the English walnut. So there's the graft line. That's where two different types of trees have grown together. Isn't that cool? So I had enough. So I'm going to make some handles. There's one that I just started on. So what's the matter? So if you look on this handle, Claro walnut up here, English walnut back here, and the graft line is right down through there, and it's really strong. So really amazing stuff. There's a better shot of it up there in the top. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you, which isn't quite as exciting, but interesting nonetheless. So we were at the show, and Mike Smerk introduced me to a friend of his. His name is Frank, and it's actually Frank's brother. He has a business where he builds speakers, audio speakers. And he brought me this piece of oak that came off the river bottom somewhere.
Red oak.
Red oak, yeah. Not terribly exciting red oak. But here's what is exciting. Look at the growth rings. So Jake and I, with the magnifier on the other day, counted up. So the growth rings represent annual growth. So in 1 inch, there were
31
rings. Now, if you contrast that, here's a piece of, well, say, modern red oak.
Well, wait, you should point out how old the tree probably was.
Well, I mean, I'll give you that in a second. So here's a modern piece of red oak, and in 1 inch there are 9 rings. So this is how much more dense it is. So if there's, I mean, you can tell by the rings that we're quite a ways away from center.
You mean you can tell based on the arc?
Yeah, right, the radius, right? So center's way over here somewhere. So in that 1 inch, if there's 31, there's approximately 100 years worth of growth right there. And that is close to the outside of the tree, but the center of the tree is over here. So it's a fairly old piece of oak. Anyway, interesting stuff. I made a couple handles out of it, or I'll make a couple handles out of it. All right, so now let's talk mortise and tenon. So this is one of those joints that you have to know how to do. It is probably one of the most common woodworking joints of all. It's one of those ones that doesn't get much appreciation because the only time you see it is when it fails. So providing it never fails, nobody would ever know. So if you look at, and it's typically where two pieces of wood come together at a right angle in the middle of the board, as opposed to the end where you would put a dovetail. So if you're looking at it from my perspective, hit this one, Jake. If you're looking at it right here, you have no way of telling how that piece is joined to that piece, right? It could be dowels, could be a mortise and tenon, but you never know, and like I said, you would never find out unless it failed. So in those circumstances, I say do it with power tools. There's nothing to be appreciated. However, there are times when you do see it, and this is called a through wedge tenon. So briefly, what I've done is I've chopped a rectangular shaped hole through this piece, and it is then tapered. So if you were to look sideways at this, it flares, kind of like a dovetail. This piece, it has the tenon, and by the way, I'm going to help you with some terminology here. It's not a tendon. There's no D. T-E-N-O-N. This tenon, which is what you're looking at right here, obviously is attached to that. Before I put this through, I make 2 saw cuts near the edge, and I saw them on a bit of an angle so that they come very close to the edge back here. Then when this piece comes through, I drive 2 wedges in, and those wedges spread the tenon to create an internal dovetail. And when glued, it all becomes one piece, and it's extremely strong. So when you're going to show it off and see something like that, that's the time to do it by hand. Now down here in the bottom, by the way, whenever you do this, you always have to drive your wedges and cut your mortise. Your mortise is cut so that it is parallel to the grain. You would never cut a mortise across this way. And when you drive your wedges, it always has to be, the wedge has to be perpendicular to the run of the grain. In other words, it would split. So when you're doing something like this, with this piece coming in here, you wouldn't put a long mortise like that. You have to do 2 little short ones, just because of the restrictions in grain direction. So that's the reason why there are 2 as opposed to 1 down there. Now, let me wheel this out of the way. before we do, let's just say if Pete's online. So this is Pete Ambrose right here, dovetail master from Mississippi. And
Did you want to explain that?
I'll have proof of that soon.
Wait, did you want to explain that the apron is?
My apron?
No, the
What are you saying, Jake?
these are mortise and tenon by machine.
What are?
The top pieces.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to show them that. I can't show them.
Well, I know. Just tell
show
them.
Well, I'm going to show them. I'm going to do it right here. So let's do should we do the hand one first, or should we do the power tool one? I think we better do the hand one first, because it's going to take the longest. And if we have to, I can blast through that one. So I'm going to use walnut. So what we're going to do is we're going to mortise this piece in like that, as if we were making a frame, whatever. Just an example. And why am I using walnut? Well, I wanted to use something relatively hard. I didn't want people thinking that I was chickening out by using something soft. And that's not very good walnut. As you see, it's mostly sapwood. So first thing I'm going to do is get my shooting board out. I assume there's questions coming, and you guys are going to let me know when they arise.
Yep.
Pick my 5.5. Make sure that the blade is parallel to the sole so that I get a nice square cut. Now I'm going to go ahead and just square up the end. Oops, not enough. So I'm pulling it away from the fence here, cutting a little chamfer on the far side. Then I'll just clean up that end until that chamfer almost disappears. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and shoot this long edge. This is the one that will actually cut the mortise in. All right, and we want to make sure those are square. If those aren't square, then we're not going to get a very square. We're not going to get a very square joint when we join them like that. So, got to check now. It's actually out just a little bit, so I'm going to adjust that slightly. And this is a piece of 2" by 3/4" stock. That's good. Okay. So we'll take this piece. Now, I'll identify the tools as I pick them out. I'm going to use a marking gauge and a mortising gauge. I'm going to use a 1/4" mortise chisel. And there's a reason why you want to use a mortise chisel, and I'll explain that as we get into it. And I'll show you something that I'm going to do to help make this a little more accurate as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is determine how long that mortise needs to be, or the tenon, sorry, how deep the mortise is. It gets its strength, it gets its real strength from glue surface, wherever long grain meets long grain. So as we cut a hole in here and then put part of this into that, the only part that's really being of benefit is going to be the cheek, or the side, the face, the big face of each of the sides of the tenon, and each side of the inside of the mortise. So obviously the deeper it is, the more glue surface you'd have, the stronger the joint. But I'm going to suggest that we don't want to go too far because we don't want to weaken this piece unnecessarily. So let's go about like that. That's probably 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to take my marking gauge and I'm going to score a line, or scribe a line, all the way around, and I want it good and deep, because the look of the joint actually comes from the interaction of this shoulder I'm about to cut. I will cut as it meets the side of the piece that houses the mortise.
Got a question?
Yeah.
Why do you use a 5.5 over a shooting plane?
Why do I use a 5.5 on the shooting board?
Over.
No, over a shooting plane.
Oh, because it would pretty hard to use a shooting plane to do anything else with, and my bench is usually crowded as it is. I can use my 5.5. It works great in the shooting board because it's long enough and heavy enough, and yet it's a great multi-purpose plane everywhere else. So I'm not interested in having a separate setup. What?
Convenience.
Yeah, convenience. Yeah, it's all about convenience. All right, so there's my shoulder line. I'll save that because that's going to give us our depth as well. I'm going to cut my mortise first because it's much easier to fit the tenon to the mortise than it is the other way around. The mortise actually becomes the standard. So in this case, I've got 3/4 stock. So now I have to decide, well, how big am I going to make this mortise? How big am I going to make this tenon? If I were to go 1/2 inch, that would make a very strong tenon. I'd only be taking 1/8 of an inch off either side. I'd preserve quite a bit of this material. But over here, I'd have this great big hole with just 1/8 of an inch on either side. And that would become the weak link. So the rule that we tend to follow is 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So that means we'll have 1/3 cheek, 1/3 tenon. I didn't do that very well. Try it again. 1/3 cheek. Oh, you really screwed that up. Try it again. Anyway, use your imagination here. If this should be 1/3, this would be 1/3, and this would be 1/3. Then when it comes over here to cutting the mortise, we'd have 1/3, 1/4 of an inch of material out here. The hole of the mortise would be 1/4 of an inch, and they have 1/4 of an inch out here. So theoretically, that's going to give you your best or your least compromise in terms of strength of any one piece. Okay. So we're going to, in order to do that, we need a 1/4 inch mortise chisel. I've got a 3/16 there as well, and I'll show you why I'm going to use that in a moment. Just checking to see how sharp this is. Now that edge looks like it could use a little bit of work, so I may as well show you this. I'm going to put a quick edge on this. This is not quite like this isn't like a beveled edge chisel where you're doing a lot of careful finish work. When this is used, it's being pounded on quite heavily, so it doesn't have to be brought up to the same standard. I'm using my Wolverine grinding jig, which is an add-on to any bench grinder. It consists of this base plate down here and this platform assembly. Everything works on a cam, so it's easy to adjust, and it's rock solid. I'm just going to mimic the angle that's already on there. So I just have to loosen this a little bit, tip it in, and then sighting along here, I just want to see when I got to pull it back a little bit. When the angle that's already on there best matches the angle being set up between the tool rest.
But you also need to be
chisel.
mindful that it's a hollow ground, and
Yep.
you want that bevel to remain fairly stout.
Yes. Typically you're 30 degrees on a mortise chisel. Just because the amount of pounding, you don't want too little metal out there. So what I really like about these, I'm using a CBN wheel. They cut extremely fast and very cool. They actually act like a heat sink. So the tool hardly gets, that's barely even warm. On some grinding wheels, I would have already had to stop and dip it. And I'm just eyeballing the edge to try to keep that square. As soon as I get a burr roll over, then I know I'm done, and I'll go over to the stones and do the last little bit of finish work over there. When I say you don't have to be quite as fussy, I'm not talking about the sharpening part, but I'm talking about the amount of prep work that you do on the back of the chisel. I've done more on this than I normally would. Okay, I'm going to use 1,000 and 16,000. So I'll set that down on the primary bevel, raise it up just a few degrees, little wee short strokes. If you don't, with these narrow chisels, if you try to do circles like that, it's too easy to end up skewing the edge, and I don't want to do that. So as soon as I can tell that I've made contact all the way across, I'll come over here to the 16, raise it up a little bit higher, little wee short strokes. And you can tell by the shadow that it's leaving that I got a full width polish on there, meaning the edge is straight. Just get rid of the burr. That's all we got to do. Now, no questions?
Yeah, a couple.
Oh, shout them out.
Somebody wanted to know if IBC, any chance IBC's coming out with this mortise chisel assemblage.
Well, I've been asking and I got tired of asking, so I have heard absolutely nothing about that.
And Joyce wanted to know if the wheel on the end of the marking gauge should be fixed or turned.
The marking gauge wheel is always fixed. If it's turning, it's defective. You want that to be fixed. What did I do with the other one? There it is here. Yeah, that stays nice and tight. If you turn, it's very difficult to get it to cut if it's turning. All right, so here's I developed this with a friend of mine named Paul Hayton up in Ontario. And the idea was to come up with a mortise gauge that was going to be a little more accurate and easier to use. So the nice thing about it is you just buy that. And then you can swap it out or have a second gauge, whatever. Put that in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this thumb wheel up here. And then I'm going to wind this in. So this shiny part in here stays fixed. This cutter out here moves. And this brass knurled thumb screw tightens one against the other. So you take your mortise chisel and you set it down in there, and then you squeeze it between the two. And then come in here with the thumb locker, and now that is this. And everything to do with the mortise and tenon is gauged off of your chisel. So now what we're going to do is we'll just put this anywhere, meaning I'm not being particular as to where this is going to go. We'll just go in the middle of the board. So I'm going to draw a line here. Most of this is for you to be able to see it. This is 2 inches long. I'll get a small rule. This is 2 inches, actually a little better than that, but I'm going to mark out 2 inches. Like I said, I wouldn't do this normally, but I'm doing it so that I can kind of teach you what I'm doing while I'm doing it. All right, now we don't want to chop our mortise all the way from side to side. Number one, there's always a chance that the perimeter of the hole, the mortise, is going to be a little bit rough. So if you went all the way over, you'd run the risk, A, of seeing a little bit of sloppiness here if the tenon went all the way to the edge. And if there's any slop around the opening, you're going to see it on this side. So what we do is we close it in so that it puts a shoulder. I'll show you what I mean. See if I can just do this by hand. Essentially want to have a shoulder all the way around. This is going to screw it up when it comes time to me to actually draw on it.
Kevin wants to know if you didn't have a mortise gauge, would you need 2 marking gauges?
Well, you need 2 marking gauges anyway, and you'll see as I go through this why you need at least 2 marking gauges. If you're having to stop and switch back and forth, you think you've done everything you need to with that gauge, and then you change it to something else, and then you no sooner do that and realize you forgot something and you have to undo it and put it back. Every time you do something like that, it just invites an opportunity or gives you an opportunity to screw up. So here's the idea. Our tenon is going to be surrounded all the way around with a shoulder. And then that shoulder will meet this piece perfectly, and that's where we get a nice tight fit. So this is our full width. We're going to step inside. I'm going to put about 1/8 of an inch shoulder on there. So this red line and this red line will represent the outside edges of the tenon. I'm going to put my vise in here. I need some light, Jake. Can't see. Hopefully that doesn't screw you up. Now, I want to find the center, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over. I'm going to eyeball it first, lock it. I'll put a little mark on there. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but I can. No, it's got to come over a little bit more. So, put a mark right there, and then flip this around, and that one wants to line up. Doesn't quite. So I got to close it a little bit more. Try it again, find a fresh spot. So there are my two marks. There's one there and there's one there. And then when I put this down, Jake, I can't see. You got that microphone right in my face. I gotta put the headgear on. I can't see that. I gotta make a deeper mark. I can't see. No. Move it a little bit more. Try that. Okay, there. Now what I'm going to do, and because of the way the cutters oppose one another, whereas you'd normally have a marking, when you drag a marking gauge through the wood, the bevel being on this side pulls the head of the tool tight this way, so that it ensures the cutter is going to stay parallel to this edge because it's pulling, the cutter is pulling the tool in this direction. But on this gauge, you've got the bevel on opposite sides, which that negates any of that advantage I just mentioned. So what I need to do is pull with my left hand, and I'm just going to start the cut for the marks. And I'll just keep going a little bit deeper each time. Okay, now I can see it. All right, here's the problem you're going to encounter when you're trying to do this freehand and you're holding it like that, and you need to get that hole or that mortise. Those inside walls must remain parallel to these outside walls. If not, when you put this together, it's going to be off on an angle, and you want it to be nice and perpendicular. So you can make yourself a little guide. It's not hard. I'm going to get a scrap of wood, and it's just going to give me a little bit of a wall. I'll do it with the table saw. Oh, I should have been prepared for this, and I'm not. We'll use a piece of. What am I doing? Is she going to be in my way?
No, I just don't want dust all over it.
That could have been a bullet. Now we got to lay this out first before we go any further.
Quick question
Yeah.
from Daniel. Why does Rob prefer the wheel style marking gauge versus a traditional wooden one?
Well, the traditional
Is he
marking gauge,
referring to a pin?
I don't even have any anymore. But a more traditional marking gauge had a pin. And the problem is, as soon as you set the marking gauge down on the board, you lost sight of the pin. You had no idea where it was. The wheel style allows you to come in here, and if you would need to go a little bit further, you can simply roll the gauge, much more precise. You see it, and it's very easy to sharpen. You just have to face hone. And when I say face hone, I mean, I think I have got one right here. If that were to, when that gets dull, I take my cutter like this, and a little bit of lubricant on the stone. You can use the diamond wheel actually for this, is even better. The diamond stone, the trend. Where is my trend? Where's my trend, Jake?
On the bottom.
Just put that down there like that, and just face hone. How come I don't have any paper towel? There it is, here in my pocket. I got it, yeah. So this one's brand new and it hasn't been prepared yet. That's one of the things that we do. As you can see, I haven't touched the outside perimeter yet on that. So it'd take a little more work. But that's all you have to do to get them back into shape. So a lot easier.
But the pin style more scratched than cut, didn't it?
No, well, you had to modify them. Most of the ones you buy are just literally a round pin. They look like the end of a needle, only larger. So they scratch, and you had to go in and you had to shape them and turn them into a knife, and it's a difficult process. All right, now what I want to do is I want to have something that I can clamp. I'm going to cut a rabbet on this so that I can clamp this to the side, and this will act as a guide for my chisel so I can get that mortise started standing plumb. So we'll go about like, that'll give us enough. And we want that to come over. Now what I'll do is I'll take my marking gauge, put it in there. So if we're going to take this off, then we need to remove this amount of material. All right, let's go over the table saw. We can crank this out rather quickly. I'll go right about there. Okay, now raise that up. Just checking until I get that. So there's my cut, and I'm not quite on the line. Now, I don't know why, but that seems to be sloped a little bit. I want to make sure that this is standing at 0. All right, let's go check that.
People are chirping your safety habits here.
They're what?
They don't like your safety habits
Well,
around the.
they're my safety habits.
They think Megan should be wearing glasses and that you should be wearing a push or using a push block. Safety glass.
Yeah, Megan's wearing glasses.
Safety.
Somebody asked if you wear shorts all winter long.
That was Sue.
Say on safety shorts.
Safety shorts, okay.
Safety shorts. All right, that looks to be nice and square. And that also looks to be right on my line. So, I'll clamp that in place. Safety, safety. You know, Dale Nish was once called to be a, I forget what they call a professional witness at a lawsuit involving a table saw. And they wanted him to state how something could have been made safer. And he said, well, they could have put a rubber blade on the table saw. Which was about to say, there's certain things that you just have to be able to do with your own ability to be careful. I don't get overly excited about that. I know what my limitations are. I have a saw stop. That may be a luxury. It is. In other words, don't give me too much grief about my safety habits. Okay, now.
It's gonna come down a little more.
Huh?
It's gonna come down a little more. You'll pound it down. Never mind.
Yeah. All right, now I just wanted to, I've got a burr on the side of that I want to get rid of real quick.
A burr from grinding the bevel.
Yeah. So you'll notice a mortise chisel. Has anybody made a donation yet?
Several.
Yeah, good. Good. You guys are supposed to give me some feedback. So here's a mortise chisel. I forgot to mention this. Here's a 1/4-inch beveled edge. There's a mortise chisel. The idea of a mortise chisel, not only is it more stout, because it's going to go, this would flex actually when you beat it so
should
hard.
grab the 1/2 inch.
Why is it too
It's a
hard
better
to see?
visual.
When might not get through this? All right. Jake says this is a better visual. There's your mortise chisel. There's your beveled edge. There's lots of reference surface on the mortise chisel. So as you start to chop, all that reference surface helps, doesn't absolutely prevent, but helps to keep this from twisting on you while you're pounding. Whereas this one may quite readily twist, and that's not going to make for a very good mortise. So if you want to come over this side and just have a quick look, the only thing I forgot to do is to give myself a depth gauge on this. I'm going to get a Sharpie out.
Do you want a finer Sharpie?
No, this will work. What I do want is I changed that setting.
You can just set it right off that though.
Trying to find where is the piece I use. There it is. I don't need that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mortise chisel and I'm going to put a mark. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than this, and you'll see why. Put a mark on here. Put it all the way around. And that'll be my depth gauge. So with this block in place, now let me just bring my light down. With this block in place, I'm going to purposely stay away from, that's the edge, that will eventually be the edge of my mortise. But I'm going to stay away from that for right now. The reason is I don't want to beat that up. I'll make that my last chop. So I'm going to come in here, be about 1/8 of an inch away, make a chop, and I'll back up a little bit. Now I'm using the block to help, and I'm squeezing this together to help keep this standing plumb. I typically would be a little more aggressive, and I usually would have made that out of a piece of maple because it takes a fair bit of abuse. I'm just pushing it like this, and when you drive the chisel down, the bevel on the side pushes the chisel forward like this, and those sharp edges sever those fibers and give you a surprisingly clean wall on both sides of your mortise. Now, I like to get down to depth as quick as possible. I find it just makes it easier to work. And these things, see how cool these are? That's a little chunk that comes out. Now, if you tried to do this, chop this hard on a beveled edge chisel. I've done it before, and it will flex in your hand. Doesn't work. Once you're set up, this is actually quite easy. You'll also notice that I'm not grabbing hold of this. I'm just laying it in the palm of my hand like you would operate the bolt on a lever action, bolt action. And I'm doing that so that the walls of the sides of the sides of the chisel will guide the chisel as I chop it. Now, you notice that this handle came off. I just replaced that recently. I should put the other one back on. It's going to drive me crazy.
There's one right there, isn't it?
I got it right here. Okay, we're down to depth. But it's deep. And I'll keep going this way. The other reason I'm not going right to the line right now is because this still allows me to pry to get this material out of the way without fear of mucking up the outside edges.
How much are you moving the chisel back each chop?
That depends on the wood. In my case, I'm taking pieces that would be a little less than 1/8 of an inch, probably closer to 3/32. And yeah, this came off, but this should already be set now anyway. Now here's where I sometimes will come in with a narrower chisel just to get rid of that junk. Now the reason I prefer a narrower chisel is I don't have to worry about this being tight against the sidewalls. And if you try to do that with a beveled edge chisel, it'll flex on you. Okay, are we down to depth? I don't think so. Cords wrapped around my leg, Jake. All right, now I just flipped this so that I'm now going this way with the flat part of the chisel so I can come in here, or I can get closer to that line. And this is where you need to have a sharp chisel because, shoot, that's not stayed put. Because you're trying to come down the end grain slope inside there, and you need a sharp chisel so it'll bite here and not just slip. Okay, that's to depth. That's probably, I can maybe one more time. I'm going to take another chop here before I actually set it right on that. So now I'm going to go right on the line. Eyeball it, make sure I'm standing plumb. Now I'm going to flip the chisel around so that I can get that crest down below the surface, or down below up here. And if I get it right down to the bottom, I can then pull it like that. And what that will do is that'll leverage this part against that inside wall, and it'll scrape along the bottom and clean that up for me. Okay, now we'll go on this side.
Did you plane that block to make sure it was plumb?
Did I plane
The
edge?
No, the guide block that you're using there that you have the chisel up against.
No. I kind of wish I had I forgot to prepare that. I took it out of the scrap bin, hoping that the sides are parallel. But no, I would have prepared that with a little more caution had I been thinking ahead. Now I'm right out here, and I don't want to work on that. I want to leverage against that edge. So I'm going to turn this around, drop the chisel to the bottom, and then scrape along that bottom. I can actually take this off now. Got to get these pieces out. Now, some people use what's called a crook neck mortise chisel, which allows you to go down there, but there's no reason to worry about the bottom because nothing touches it. And even if it did, it's the end grain of the tenon touching the long grain surface. So it's of no value glue-wise, so why worry about it? Now I want to check and make sure these outside walls aren't sloping.
You need a smaller.
They are. So I'm going to go in here. I'll just pare this one by hand. Get this in position.
Ooh,
What?
you don't see what you just did?
No, I just bummed up that little piece.
Start over.
Yeah.
What finish do you have on your bench?
Had.
So,
Oil.
you might take
What?
take this opportunity to show them why you want that shoulder.
Well, Jake's wanting me to point out that when I leveraged against that, I popped up a little piece right there, but it's far enough back from the outside shoulder that it's not going to cause a problem. But if I had brought that right out to the edge, it would have.
But you did break your cardinal law.
Cardinal rule.
Cardinal.
Okay. Now we'll get some light down in there. Okay. This is rather narrow. I don't know if you're going to be able to see in there or not, but I'll show it to you. I'm just looking to see if there's any bumps. I don't think so. And that looks pretty clean. Can you see in there?
If you're doing a through mortise, do you cut from both sides or do you?
Yeah, you have to cut from both sides. There's no way you could ever start here and then end up exactly where you want on the other side. So, yeah, that's if I get into that, we're not going to get this finished, but that's a completely different topic. And we will cover it someday. All right, so mortise is done. Now we're going to come over and cut the tenon. We've got our shoulder on there. I'm going to use the exact same setting on the mortise chisel,
Mortise Gauge.
or on the mortise gauge, sorry. I'm so nervous. Now I got to get rid of these marks. If I don't, I'm going to be seeing double. This is going to make my tenon just a little bit short, but
Which is suitable.
yeah, it won't bother anything. Okay. So same idea. Because the cutters counteract each other, there's no direction provided by the cutter itself, meaning as I drag it this way, it's not going to stay nice and tight. It's going to want to wander, follow the path of least resistance. So I'll make multiple passes. The idea is going a little deeper each time until I get a mark that I can see. Then I'll go down the face, or the edge I should say, and then down this edge. Careful not to go beyond my line. Okay? Now, two things to do. Cut off the cheeks and then cut the shoulders. I prefer to do the cheeks first. The reason is that if you leave this cheek intact, meaning you haven't cut it down here, then that cheek will act as a guide or help the saw to track, meaning keep it from sliding off to one side, which might happen if this started to get as you started to get down here and this was already cut, then this piece starts to fall off. Doesn't do you any favors. Now, If you want, you can come in here and cut a little trough. It doesn't take very long to do, but it creates a huge advantage in terms of getting the cut started exactly where you want it. And what's tough about this next move is you're doing 3 things at once. 3 things? Might have meant 2. You got to follow that line. You got to get your line started. You got to get your saw started right beside that line. You also have to keep it standing plumb so that you're following down this line. And you know, you don't need to give yourself any more work than's already cut out for you.
Jack Lane wants to know if you ever clean the hole with drill press and then finish up with mortise chisels.
Say that again, please.
Do you ever start the hole, clean the hole with drill press, and then finish up with the mortise chisels?
No, mortise chisels. What he's referring to is going in, go over to the drill press and say you use a 3/16 drill bit and drill a bunch of holes there to remove a lot of the material. Mortise chisels don't work that way. Mortise chisels work when there's a solid hole. That's what keeps it on line, keeps from twisting. You can do what he just suggested with a beveled edge chisel, but the problem is this is the part people don't get. Okay, back up a little bit. This is a very difficult joint. Who am I talking to? The camera's over here. It's a very difficult joint in that in order for it to be strong, you have to have this effect. I have another piece right here. Okay? You really have to have this effect. The inside walls of the mortise have to be parallel so that when that tenon slides down in there, it's making contact. If it's tight at the top and it wiggles at the bottom, you don't have much of a joint. In order to do that, if you were to do that process where you go over and you drill out a bunch of holes in the drill press, and then you come in with the beveled edge chisel, and now you're trying to pare down that side. The odds that you're going to keep those 2 walls absolutely parallel to one another are slim to none. The advantage of a mortise chisel is that hole is the width of the chisel. The sides are square, so it's going to be the same. Those side walls are going to be parallel all the way down. And that's going to give you your best chance of getting a good glue joint. And in order for a glue joint to work, the wood has to touch. Okay? It doesn't fill gaps at all. It has to touch. If it's too tight, it forces all the glue to the bottom, and you may as well have Scotch tape on there. You need it, the go, no-go is just so close. This is a difficult joint. Very difficult to get it right from this initial tool, which is the saw or the chisel. All right, so now we got to go in and get this thing. Ideally, I want to be able to take it right from the saw. So I'm going to, by cutting that little trough, I now can set my saw down in there, and the teeth are going to lay right up against that. So first thing I want to do is get that cut started, get the curve started. Now I'm looking over here, and I want to stay plumb. Don't go below my line. Have a quick look and see how I did. I think I stayed right on. Now that I got a bit of a kerf in there to help keep the saw tracking.
You're also supporting the outside of the wood?
Well, this is stiff enough. Out of habit, I'm doing it just because sometimes you've got such a small piece out there that it folds away.
I'm thinking you're cutting in over here.
Huh? We'll find out. Okay, I'm on my line here. turn this around, just because in order to do that same little trick with the chisel, I got to push from this side. Careful when you do this so you don't blow past that line. I didn't hear any vets.
Yeah, we got
Well, you're
10.
supposed to shout them out to me.
Well, you won't stop talking.
Well, interrupt me.
We have Bob. We have
Bob who?
We have Pete.
Bob
we
Abbott.
Oh, Bob Abbott. That's not Bob, that's Bobbert.
Bobbert, yes.
We have Jake. We have
Jake from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Danny.
We have Danny.
Danny.
Danny Bell.
Danny the Bell. Representing. Where's his sticker?
I don't know.
That's out on the fridge. Danny just opening a new business in Tennessee, Clarksville, called what's the name of
Planer's
it?
Edge.
Planer's Edge. And I'm going to go down there. Luther and I are both going to go there in January and help him kick it off. All right. Now, set that aside. And I'm going to get out
Oh, Kevin's here too.
Kevin Smira
Burris.
or Kevin Burris.
Kevin Burris.
Howdy, Kev.
Peter from New York.
Pete. Which
We have Pete Ambrose and a Peter from New York.
welcome, gentlemen.
Paul's here.
Paul from
Well,
Ottawa?
Paul Morrison, yeah.
Paul.
Paul deserves a nickname.
Paul does. You haven't come up with it yet. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I've got my bench hook, I've got my crosscut saw, and now I'm going to go in, squeeze these two pieces, and what I've got to do now is I've got to make this cut, and this is where I want the shoulder to be perfect. And this is another opportunity to come in and do that little deal with the chisel to help get your cut started. Did Super Dave ever show up?
No.
Super Dave's up in Alaska visiting his mother.
He's probably taking a nap. It's about nap time in Alaska.
All right. Now, get some light on this. So when you're doing this, you got to make that cut plumb. If you undercut it, it's gonna show on the side. If you cut the opposite way, now you got to come in with a chisel and fix it. So this all is reason why you want to practice sawing so that you can get to that point where you can make a plumb cut by feel.
Josh is here too.
Who?
Josh.
Josh from BC? Which Josh? We've had several. Oh, they got to say their name.
Yeah, it is him from
Josh
BC.
from BC.
Yep.
Howdy, Josh. Okay, now we'll turn that over and get this one. Josh's last name is Brian.
Brian, yep.
Brian.
Or Brian, I don't know.
Just call him Big Josh. Canadian Artillery. I don't want to go too far because that's such a small tenon. Sure, you're funny.
No.
There. Oh, I think I did do that, Jake.
Undercut.
Yeah, not good. Not good. Now, we got to get our length. I'm going to use a pair of dividers. How are we time-wise?
Hour and 5 minutes.
How much?
Hour and 5 minutes.
Really? But we don't do short ones.
That's for sure.
And Megan's the first one to complain. She'll get grief for that. All right, so I'm going to measure this and then come up here, and I would be a little more fussy by marking this if this was a piece of furniture I was building. Now I'll use my do I not have it? My 6-inch combination square. Ken, would you do me a favor and grab my 6-inch combination square? It's in the
Tool cabinet.
it's in the tool cabinet.
It's in the main wing, though.
Yep.
Not main.
Yeah, it's in that
Centerpiece.
main section, center section. We just got back from doing a wood show in Ontario, so all our tools are up there. Oh, Jake, I
Right there.
cannot see.
It's right there.
Oh, you can see it. I can't.
Yeah.
Where?
Move it ahead. Yep. Right there.
There?
Mhm.
Now the reason I want my combination square, thank you, is I need to be able to make a plumb line, and this is the only one I can do that with. Now, we get that standing plumb. And I'm going to use my dovetail saw on this just because it's a small, fine cut. Now we turn this on the edge. I think I'll do it right here. Get that level. Grab my crosscut saw. All right, now clean that up with a chisel. Come down from the top. What are you doing, Frick?
Chatting.
Typing like a madman.
In the case of undercutting the tenon, can you just glue a thin strip to the affected side and pare it back to fit?
Well, that's probably what I'm going to have to do, but I don't want to make that call yet until I try it. Now I'm just using the chisel to finish what I didn't finish with the saw, meaning I just had to go a little bit deeper.
Which usually happens in the center because it's.
Well, it's usually a little safer to stop short and do this than to try to get it all the way across without cutting below the
On the
shoulder
outside.
line. It's easier for me to be on this side because then I can push. All right. Now I'm going to cut what have I got? I'm going to cut a little chamfer around the top. sure. You know, it goes this way. The mortise gauge was off center slightly. Okay, so there's a good line. Check this one. That's just, that'll clean up when it's flushed up. There's a good joint on the inside. And that one's not too bad. And we glue that up, and that would make for a decent joint. So it wasn't as bad as I thought. Now, questions on that before we switch over and do a power tool?
Somebody wanted to know why you didn't use a shoulder plane.
Well, I'm glad they asked that. Because I have a Cosman crosscut saw. The whole idea, let me explain this. I love telling this story. So I went over and shot a video with Alan Peters in 2005 over in his shop in England. And during the course of shooting, we were conversing. Because Alan taught me, and his advice was always, you put the saw where you want the cut to be. You don't put it a 1/16 of an inch away with the intent of then purposely going in and paring back to the line. Why do that? Why have a dovetail saw if you're going to do it like that? Use a chainsaw. It's quicker. And he said, you know, Rob, I still get invited to all the big gallery openings, and all the hot shots are always there. He said, but there's not a one of them that has the guts to put the saw on the line and make the cut. They all cut away from the line and then pare back to it. I was shocked because I only did it the way he ever taught me, which was if you want your saw cut there, then you put your saw there. Well, when it comes to cutting that shoulder, the idea is if you can't do it with this, then you fix it with this. But if you want to be efficient, you learn to do it with this. Occasionally, I have to come in and use a shoulder plane to clean it up, but I don't do it intentionally. I try to get it to the point where I can cut it, I can assemble it right from the saw. I got lucky on that one. But a little bit of practice, if you have, you know, people always beat me up on this because I make saws and sell them, but let me tell you something. I make saws that you can actually get to a point where you'll be able to do that with the tool. And if your saw is not up to it, then all the practice in the world is not going to make any better because your saw is not producing a joinable surface. That's the key. Your saw has to leave a surface that you can join to and it'll give you a perfect joint. If you don't do that you're missing the boat. Any other shorter questions?
Punisher Woodworking says, do you guys have a flyer I could hand out an event that is happening in the U.S. called Stand Down for Military Veterans? I would love to hand out flyers for the Purple Heart Project.
So I'm sorry, Ken, I didn't hit the first part of what you said.
Publisher Woodworking
They want to know
says,
if we have flyers. Which we
want to know
don't.
if you have flyers they could hand out at a Stand Down for Military Veterans event.
We don't. We don't
business
have
cards.
flyers.
Or business cards.
Huh?
Business cards.
We have business cards, yeah. We have a website. We have an awesome website that Luther and Jake built that you could certainly use. But we don't have flyers. I kind of started my business when we were getting away from paper catalogs and everybody was ordering off the internet anyway, so why go through the added expense of producing paper? But this is a different circumstance, so maybe we need to look at that. All right, I'm just cleaning up while you guys are asking your questions until we switch gears. Anything else? How are we doing on our draw, Megan?
Very good.
Have we paid for the chisels yet?
Yeah,
Have we paid for a vet yet?
I think so.
Really? That would be awesome news.
I believe we have.
Don't keep all the excitement bottled up. I want to hear it.
We'll do a total at the end.
Well, you should be giving a running total so I can get excited about it too. Okay. Switching gears.
Yeah.
So let me introduce you to a hollow chisel mortiser in case you've never heard of such a thing. I remember the first time somebody said a drill press that drills a square hole. I said, what? So here it is. There's your drill. There's your hollow chisel. So this is a 1/2 inch. There's a knack to sharpening them. And this goes up inside and this spins. Now you got to have a little bit of clearance. So as you push that down into the wood, the drill pulls away the waste. These sharp corners go in and get what the drill doesn't, and that all kind of gets gathered up in here and exits out through here, and it's hot. And you have to kind of get your feed rate right because it's your chips that are taking away the heat. This thing gets really hot. You can see by the color. But it's a great tool. And as I said, when you are cutting a mortise and a tenon joint that is not going to be seen, then why not do it by the fastest method possible, which in this case would be the hollow chisel mortiser. So I'm going to go through and walk you step by step through this. First thing I'm going to do is prepare my stock. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to square up the end, and then we'll straighten and clean up one edge. Check and make sure it's square. Okay. Now we'll do the same thing we did before in terms of the layout. So we've got a 2-inch wide piece, but we don't want to be right at the edge, same reason. So I'm going to step back in here about 1/8 of an inch. Okay. We will cut that about the same depth. That's the end we're going to work with. So let's go over here. Now I want that centered, and I also want my depth adjusted. So I'm going to. Now, by the way, this is a relatively inexpensive hollow chisel mortiser made by Delta. So I don't think they're in business anymore. But there's other companies that make them. Really light duty, but I built 150 dining chairs that I did for a school. A private school several years ago, and I built them all with this. It just had to go easy on it because they were 1/2 inch. Cutting a 1/2 inch mortise in maple taxed this thing to its limit. 1/4 inch is no problem. Now, if you turn and look over here, I've got a much bigger mortise, hollow chisel mortiser. This is made by Poitra, which is bought out by General. This is foot operated, so there's a lot of torque, and I've got it taken apart because we wanted to get the rust off. Haven't even set up yet because that one has been suiting me fine. That's probably got a 1.5 horse, 2 horsepower motor driving it, so nothing's going to shut that down.
Somebody wants to know the advantages of that type of mortising.
Your microphone's off.
Somebody wants to know the advantages of that type of mortise machine as compared to the cheaper drill press version.
The one, the drill press, I've never used the one. You can buy an attachment for the drill press. The first thing I would say is that you've got a lot more leverage on this. I guess that's called a rack and pinion, but that's you get quite a bit of torque on that, and I don't know what it would be like. I can't tell you because I've never used one. But this is, I think when I bought this brand new, I think it was $500. So it's not a lot. That's 500 Canadian, so about 150 US. Just kidding, it's better than that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to find the center of this. So put a mark there. Flip it over. That looks to be centered. So I'm going to adjust my fence. And I'm just going to put the point of the drill where's my, I've got a depth stop. Jacob, check this out. So that just, this rod is my depth stop. Now what I'm doing is I'm lining up I'm lining up the fence so that the point of the drill inside the chisel is right on that marking gauge line I just made. Okay, now I'll move this back. I'm going to drop this down. I'll do it like this so that you can see. I'll drop that down to the depth that I want. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to tighten the depth stop. All it is just a rod with a locking screw on it. So now when I do this, I pull down until that stops over here. And I can adjust my, this is adjustable, so I can put this anywhere I want it so I get good leverage on it. You can clamp it in place, but you shouldn't have to. So the secrets that I've picked up to this is I'm going to do my outside ones first. And you never want to take a part of a hole because it'll cause your chisel to slide over toward the open part and you may break it. So I'm right on that outside line, all the way down. Oh, shoot, I forgot my, sorry, I forgot this. This is my hold down. And this just keeps that piece from popping up on the return stroke. Okay, so I've done that outside one, then I'm going to come over and do this outside one. I'm just eyeballing it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over so that the space between the hole I'm chopping now and the one previous is less than the width of the chisel. So you'll see why in a moment. Now I got wood on both sides, so again, I don't want, if I was to be right here and try to take the half the width of a chisel, that chisel is going to want to slide into that area of least resistance, and it's going to cause the chisel to flip over like that, and I may break it. So I need to have material on both sides, equal resistance. Now I can go in and I'll set what's left and put it right in the middle of the chisel.
Bob wants to know how you sharpen that chisel. Or
Wow, did I ever get that thing out of center, way off center? I don't know how I managed to do that. I'll have to work around it. Pardon that? How do I sharpen it?
yeah.
Well, Bob, if I get through this and we have time left over, I'll show you. But that is fast, so much faster than chopping a mortise by hand. There's a couple of little peculiarities about it. One is that they tend not to be centered, meaning when they hollow these things out, when they manufacture them, they always seem to be a little bit off. So you end up having, instead of having a hole like this, you usually always end up with a bit of a radius of part of the drill on one side or the other. So if you look down there, it doesn't give you a perfect wall like you do with a mortise chisel. You see how that's a little bit less than perfect? And the other thing it takes a bit to set up. When you're changing it out and putting your chisel in, you want the chisel to be parallel to this. And that's got to be just right. So what I usually do is clamp something really long. I clamp something onto the drill like that, onto the end of the mortise chisel like that. And then when I'm putting it in place, I can measure from here to the fence and from here to the fence, and best bet for getting it set up just right. Hate changing it, actually. All right, I did not mean to do that. I got that thing way over to one side. Well, we'll have to cut it to fit. It's gonna be a little more awkward, but we can do it.
Super Dave wants me to tell everyone that he's
Up?
that everyone's lucky because he's up there fighting bears with his bare hands for dinner.
That's his dog.
Apologize to him for waking him from his nap.
Well, we wore him out. All right.
He was working steady 3 hours a day.
Jim said he's probably just hanging out with his chickens in his chicken mansion.
If they let him. I'm going to put a shoulder line on this. I'm going to go down 3/4. Scribe a line all the way around. Now, we're going to have to do this by eye because that's off center, but we can do it. All right, we're going to go over here to the table saw. Now, I've got a rip blade in, and what I like about the rip blade is it cuts square on the bottom, and it's your best bet for cutting parallel to the grain. Now, I also want some more support, so what I'm going to add, you out of room?
No.
What I'm going to do is add my auxiliary fence, and we did a YouTube on making this if you haven't seen it. And this is just going to give me some more reference surface to lay up against. Now I also want to make sure that this is square. It should be, but I'll double check it. Can you see my 6-inch steel square? I don't know where that is. Haven't seen it in a while. Okay, that looks good. Okay,
Did you have the dust collector button?
why? All right. Now, since this is off center, how are we going to do this? Mark it and then just try to get close. This is so much easier when you have a whole lot of them to do because you can get it set up and then just run them. The setup time is a bit much. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this close and then I'll show you how I dial it in. Now, if you're not comfortable holding it like this, you can always clamp a piece over here. Jake, are you looking up here? So that'll, but you know what? That blade's nice and sharp. Now this is where I screwed up in not getting that perfectly centered, because then all I would have to do is just turn this around and make the cut on the other side. But instead, I've got to go in here and actually change it.
Ken is on safety patrol.
Why would it matter? See if it works. All right, now I'm going to go cut these off. I'm not going to try to do it accurately because the whole idea behind this is we're going to use power tools to do it. So I'm just going to hack it off real quick.
Can I share some exciting news?
Yeah?
We, wait till you're done cutting now.
Huh?
We just surpassed $3,500 in donations.
That's awesome because that covers a vet. So let's keep going.
Well, wait a second.
What?
We're still, I mean, remember we've got to cover the
Right, it costs, but that's still.
yeah.
We need about 3,000 in order to take care of one vet. Okay, now,
Can you step back?
okay, so I'm going to get the top one. I'm just eyeballing that. I'm going to get the top one close first. All right, now I've got that one. That top surface is where I want it. So now I just got to do this one to get it to fit. Hopefully you can see how much smarter it would have been to actually have centered that. What I should have done is made a chop, turned this around, made another chop, made sure they lined up. Like I remember I said that the drill bit usually isn't perfectly centered. Well, perfect example of that. Almost. A little too tight. You had to force that. You'd never get any glue to stay on the side. Okay, that's a good fit. Now we've got to cut those shoulders. I'm going to take this fence off. How many people do we have on tonight, by the way?
300. Unless my counter's wrong, just give me a second.
Oh, Jake, I need to have the headgear on.
Man, Super Dave's wife is even here and he's not.
Where's Sue? I thought, or she the one that said he was out hunting polar bear?
No, Super Dave.
Okay, that looks to be the right. Now, if you want, if you insist, you can put a miter gauge in there, and I'll adjust the miter gauge. I'll leave that up against the fence, and then adjust the miter gauge accordingly. That was a shallow one, so I can turn this. You know what? That was not. I'm going to adjust this again.
Could you cut off the other two pieces of the shoulder? While you have the fence adjusted,
I'm going to do that by hand. That was a serious error on my part to not have centered that, because it doubled the time I had to set everything else up. I'm just finishing this cut.
Tim asks, can you speak to the pros and cons of grooves in the tenon, such as those in dowels, to help capture glue?
Putting grooves in the tenon?
Yeah.
No, I've never done that. I'll show you. I'll glue this up, and I'll show you how I adjust, or how I work around that. Okay, now I'm just going to mark these. We could go over and do these.
We should. This is all power
Yeah,
tools.
all right, we will. At least I'll show you. Take this back over. On something small like this, what?
Well, you had the shoulder, the distance to the shoulder perfected.
Too much. I just hit that.
Why not use a bandsaw for that? Someone asks.
You can cut them on the bandsaw. Bandsaw's not going to give you as smooth a wall as you're going to get off the table saw.
Or Ken, were they asking specifically for that cut to be on the bandsaw?
Do you know what he meant, Ken? The whole process on the bandsaw? It's far less intimidating to cut your tenons on the bandsaw. You could do it on the bandsaw. Our cord won't go all that way. There's numerous ways to do this, right? I'm showing you a couple. All right. Now, where's my block plane? Cutting a chamfer all the way around is going to help with glue distribution. Now let's just, before we put glue on it, let's see if it's closing. Now I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna undercut. This would be my first line of defense, to come in here and just undercut this, which I think is what was holding up the joint. And I could even come and do the same thing all the way around, stepping in or starting at about the 1/16 of an inch mark.
1/16 of an inch in from
Yeah,
the
you
perimeter.
come over here and I'll show you. So what I would do is come in here, right about here, and then just slightly undercut into the side of the cheek of the tenon. I don't need anything more than the perimeter to touch. Let's try this again. Make sure you don't have any debris in there.
Down.
Hmm? Oh, wrong side. Okay, so that closes, but that doesn't. So now we're, of course, power tools screw everything up. That's all right. So now we've got to troubleshoot and find out what's wrong. We're closed out here, but if we look over here, it's sloped.
Well,
I don't know if you noticed, but when I used the miter gauge to make that cut and then when to flip it over and do the other side, it didn't line up. So now what I'm going to do is...
what I wonder is, why does one side fit? But the other one
Because
doesn't?
the shoulder line didn't follow. If I took that shoulder line and went all the way around, it would not line up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to square up the end. Okay? Now, this is going to be a bit difficult because there's not a lot of registration surface. I need some light. You keep turning that off on me.
Well, actually, you just keep putting it right in the middle of the shot.
All right, so if I check that,
Now that you squared it up,
I have very little reference surface for the head of the
So-
tool, which is making this difficult to do.
wouldn't it be easier to go and do this on the table saw?
I could. And since we're doing it now, I could come in and use the shoulder plane too, but I'm going to go and try the table saw, and I'm going to do something that's going to make everybody freak out. I'm going to run right off of there.
You mean to get the exact
Yeah.
depth, height?
No, what I'm going to do, taking a very, very light cut. I got to find the lowest point or the farthest point away. Actually, what I'll do is I'll take this opportunity to get rid of that little notch right there that I accidentally put in the shoulder when I was doing that trimming pass. Can't keep your measuring tape in the left pocket without hitting that paddle. Take a little bit more.
Did you do the ends as well?
Well, you try to do the ends, it's just not enough.
Yeah.
And it's not impossible, but it's very difficult. Even with a miter gauge, it's very difficult to go in there and do the end and have it actually line up. You're far better. I mean, I've only got that little bit right there to do, and I can do that with a chisel. So I suspect that was the problem. We'll find out in a minute. Finish that
And you gotta-
cut.
Yeah.
By the way, our May class 2020 Purple Heart Workshop is now full on the civilian side, so we're now working on 5 classes left. I need good people. Don't hesitate to sign up. You'll love it. They love it, Ken?
Oh yeah. Somebody says, why are you not using the miter gauge to keep the wood square when trimming that tenon?
Yeah, because I didn't want to. It's a lousy it's a lousy miter gauge, actually. That's the downside of a saw stop, is they give you a terrible miter
that's right.
gauge. Not happy with the throat plate either, but other than that, I'm thrilled with the saw. All right, now I've got to join these two, so I'm being very careful. If I had a whole bunch of these to do, I would jig this up on the table saw, so I wasn't having to do each one of these individually. And I've done it before where I've had multiples and I actually stacked them side by side so that I had lots of reference surface against the fence. So multiple tenants and all stacked like that, so I had lots of reference surface against the fence and I could just push them through. You can put a clamp on it if you have to. Now this may be a little bit deep because I've increased that shoulder. If I move that shoulder back, if it is, we'll just go in and take a little bit off the end. All right, now, I figure out what's going on. When we're tight here, we haven't closed our gap over here. So I'm going to check a couple of things. I'm going to check to make sure that this surface is square first. Ooh. Oh, wow. How did I let that happen? That may be the problem. So let me explain. When I put my square on this, I didn't look carefully enough, I guess. You want to get behind me and see if you can spot this?
I doubt I can pick that up.
All right, so here's how much it's out. I don't know if you can see that. I don't think you can. So this edge is not perfectly square. So which actually does not explain the problem, because if that was the case, this one would be the one coming tight first. But I'm going to straighten it up anyway. Ooh, wrong direction.
You're definitely going to have to cut down that tenon now.
Okay, gotta take some more off the top. So it's sloped like this. I gotta take some more off the top. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to push my lateral adjustment lever toward the bottom side of the plane, and that's gonna cause the blade to project more on the top. Now when you're doing this, I'm only using the shooting board to keep it square in this direction. I'm actually pushing the board against the bottom of the plane to keep it straight.
Can you show them how you place your hand on the plane on the shooting board next time you use it?
Yeah, I will. It's closer.
Another question, if you're on the shooting board and you notice you're going in the wrong direction, do you continue the pass or stop mid-pass and switch?
Well, good question. Let's do the first one first. Go back over here. So, this isn't helpful at all, the fact that this board is not flat. When I'm using a shooting board, what I do is I try to take that hunk of meat and shove it in this wedge-shaped area. So you need to keep the shooting board standing plumb. You don't want it to tip. So I keep my hand right here over the widest part. You need to keep it tight this way so it doesn't drift away and you lose your square setup. Obviously you have to push it forward and pull it back. At the same time, you've got to keep the wood being fed in. So if I'm doing the end of the board, I've got to be constantly pushing this way. But you can't push this way harder than you're pushing the plane this way. And you got to keep it sitting down. Now I got to go in here and take another pass. Now the other question was, if you noticed they went the wrong way, well, if you stop, now you've taken material off of here and you haven't taken material off of there. If I want to keep this parallel, I guess I plow through, rip it up, and then turn it around and take the same number of passes the other direction. Tight here, tight there. That's better. All right, let's glue this up.
Why don't you use a shooting board specific plane?
Somebody asked that question earlier. Because it's a single purpose tool. Look how crowded my bench is, I'm doing one thing. I don't have room for one plane that does one thing, especially when I can do something like the 5.5, which is really good on the shooting board because of its length and weight, and very effective on the bench. So that's the reason. All right, so here's what we do. Here's what we're going to do. Any glue we put on the tenon is going to end up on the surface because it's just going to shove it up. So I'll put a little here, but a very, very small amount. What I will do is make sure, and I prefer to use a spatula for this because it's very effective. Very effective in placing the glue exactly where I want it, unlike a brush, which tends to put it everywhere. Give me a second while I clean out my glue bottle. Don't put too much, and make sure you put enough. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to try to put a nice even coat on all of that surface. I don't bother with the ends. They're end grain. All my effective glue surface is right here on these two sides. Remember, anything over here on these cheeks is most likely going to get washed up and then spread all around there, and then you got to go in with a chisel and try to get it off. Sometimes I'll just go in there and just wet that almost just enough for a little bit of a lubricant. Okay? Now, if you want, what you can do to just make this a little more effective, the gluing that is, come in here and take a couple of small blocks, bigger than that, and put them right here, but just put a little bit of clamping pressure on those cheeks, the sides of the mortise, and that'll just squeeze that and make for a little better joint.
Paul wants to know why I didn't chamfer the corners of the.
I did. Did he miss that?
I did too.
Did you? What I did is I took my block plane and I went and I chamfered all around the tenon. And that's what allows that glue to slide by so that you actually end up with some glue on the mating gluing surfaces. I don't know what the time difference is. And I apologize. I'll say it again. I should have been more careful in lining this up, because if I'd have got that dead center, then everything we did cutting the tenon would have been just make a cut, flip it over, and do the other side. But I had to go in and actually have more material on one side than the other, which is a bit of a pain. All right, questions?
I think Ken got most of them.
Yeah?
We're approaching 2 hours, so we should.
Are we?
Did you have the guitar there for a reason?
Yes. The guitar was compliments of the East Tennessee Luthiers Guild, which I'll actually be in Tennessee next week, teaching at the Woodcraft store in Knoxville. And Paul Rigney from the store,
He's here.
Paul's on there. Hey, Paul. Was very kind. Paul is a Vietnam vet, and he and the East Tennessee Luthiers Guild made this guitar, donated it to us to auction off as a means of raising money for a Purple Heart project. The current bid is $2,000. If I could play, you'd hear it, but I can't. Frick's been practicing, but it says hurts his fingers.
Thanks.
Sorry, you're the one that said it. Give me. We gotta do the.
We gotta do the draw.
Huh?
Yeah, we gotta do the draw.
What are we up to?
3,000. I have $3,838.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That'll cover a vet. You guys are great. Thank you.
Somebody asked earlier on if you were going to do a class on the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm in Seattle. I'm teaching in Seattle in February.
End of March.
End of March. We're really trying to cut down my travel schedule. We've increased the number of Purple Heart Project classes that we're going to do to 6. So we're doing one a month from May through to October, and that's a big time commitment. I still have to run this business, make you guys tools, and keep everybody happy, so I can't spend a whole lot of time on the road. But this Woodcraft store in Seattle and the Woodcraft store in Knoxville have both been huge supporters of us, and they have taken care of one vet every time we've taught a class, so I will continue to help them out. And there's a few other stores that have come online too that have helped, but these two guys have done it every time, so I tip my hat to them.
Do you want to give people the last few minutes to put in their donations?
Pardon?
Do you want to give people like a couple, just
All right, so
the
you've
last
got
few
you've
minutes
got
to
1
put in
minute.
donations?
1 minute to put in your last donation. I'll review again what you're going to get. We're going to do 2 draws, not for my marking gauge. One is for this.
No, the first one is for the chisels.
No, you do a runner-up first.
You do? I thought you did.
Yeah, come on, Jake. Don't you buy lotto tickets?
Why don't we throw one of the limited edition teal?
Why don't you be quiet?
You could sign it.
I'm going to throw this in.
Well,
I'm going to throw.
that's worth way more than a
And
T-shirt.
Pete says next week you should be getting something from him.
Who?
William.
Pete Ambrose.
Oh,
William-
yeah, okay,
wait,
Pete.
William H. Bonney is on.
William H. Bonney's on, a.k.a. Billy the Kid. So here's a Rob Cosman wood hinge box. Sorry, Frick, I didn't mean to tell you to be quiet. But when you're spending my money, I would anyway.
I'm used to it, but that's worth way more. So
This
that's
is
good.
a nice wood hinge box for business cards, and I'm going to put that in with this,
With the plane.
with the plane. Yeah. Bring the value up. Because what did you say this is worth?
345.
345, and that is worth.
125.
And that we sell those for 200.
I think
So that's puts them even.
That's barely a consolation prize.
Yeah. Okay. Any final questions? Any final comments? Anything I need? Anybody bought our T-shirts today? The new teal T-shirts?
They can't.
Just give me 1 second. We had a question.
Hi, Ange.
He's
T-shirts are on their way.
aside from the vise, do you have any other objections to the Robo benches?
How much time do we have? Hate it. Do not like it. I only worked on it one time. Don't know why anybody would. I'll say it. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you look at the two most prominent hand tool woodworkers in North America, Frank Klaus and Tay Frid, both of those gentlemen were trained in traditional apprentice programs. Both of them actually ran businesses where they built furniture, although Tay spent most of his time teaching. But both of those guys use the same style of Scandinavian bench with a shoulder vise out here like this and a tail vise. So if you're into hand tools, that is the bench. If you had the opportunity to work on all of them, this is the one that you would choose. It's just, when you put your board in here, there are no obstructions at all. And that lays in there, it clamps that tight, it does not move, it's rock solid. This is the bench to have. But to each his own. Hi?
Yeah, show the shirt one more time.
Okay, so this is our new, where's the other ones that we can compare? Oh, so we have our navy blue with the logo, and the wood is good. And so we had a little contest. First of all, Angie said the next t-shirt color should be teal. So this is hers. And Michaela, my niece, I have two. They're sisters, Megan and Michaela, and there's another Megan over there. Too many of them. We chose hers. Wood doing good. I think that's awesome. That so tells what we do here. So that is the shirt. And there's a lot of guys on here tonight that will attest to that.
Bob wants to know.
Bob
Abbott would like to know how long it would
Bobbert? Say
take.
Bobbert.
Bobbert would like to know how long it would take a production worker to make mortise Tenon joints with hand tools, each joint.
Oh, you mean once he got up and running and good at it? Oh, I don't know, Bob. I haven't met any. There aren't any left. They're all dead. They probably died 100 years ago. But I did that little thing back there. It's too far to see, but it's got 36 through wedge tenons in it, all cut by hand. And you get pretty good after a while, and you're banging them out. I mean, I was a little bit rusty.
Nick Brown says next time we should do a box.
Nick from New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Do a what box?
Didn't say.
Oh.
Probably one of
Probably similar to that.
probably the.
Well,
wood-
maybe we
wood
might do
hinge.
something when.
Yeah, Super Dave and Luke.
Yeah, that would be fun.
We will have
Thanks,
Super
Nick.
Dave do it.
Yeah, Super Dave doing a super box. It will be,
So we are one.
and it'll feature Pete Dovetails on the corner. We're what?
We're one $25 donation away from 4,000. So if we can get one more,
So
then
somebody throw in that last 25. Huh?
Just that.
It just did.
just came in.
All right. So Frick,
go.
you want to do the draw?
Well, Megan has all the names there. Jake, take the camera over so they don't think we're cheating.
Yeah.
I've been typing away.
Megan's had to type every name of every $25 donation, and if you've donated,
Yeah,
Any
all the
b- any
big
big
Often.
any,
donations
any
I've
big
been typing in.
donations?
she doesn't know how to copy and paste. What?
Any
No,
big
it doesn't,
donations?
It won't let me.
Okay, you guys argue
Trust me,
later.
I tried.
We've had a couple $500 donations.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you had to type his name in 20 times?
Here, get in the
Multiple.
shot.
We had multiple $500
Get in the
donations.
shot.
What?
We had multiple $500 donations.
You do it.
Okay.
You're the one that's been busily
Okay, so
typing.
this is
Zoom in.
So this tell them what this program's called.
This is called the Random Name Picker.
wait. Ahmed just threw in another.
Oh yeah, Ahmed the sniper, or is that a mead? According to Luther.
Feel the pressure you watching.
All right, we have to.
Zoom in, Jake.
Are we calling it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last one.
All right.
Okay, so just tell them this program real quick so they know what.
Well, this is the same program we used when we gave away tools on the online workshop. You basically just put one name per line, and then you can see the green button there that says pick a random name. It will select from the hundreds of names we have.
Okay,
here.
so when it takes this first one, is it going to take that one out so we don't end up
Yes.
pulling that same guy twice? Okay.
It should anyway.
So the first one is going to be for the wood hinge box and the 102 low angle block.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
And the winner is, it should come up at the top. Or did it?
Oh, this is awkward.
Good.
Where-
Scroll down, see if it worked. This is, I don't know, this is the same one we used. Is it underneath the button?
Yeah, scroll down a bit.
The winner is
Austin Bertelson.
Austin Burleson. I think he's from the UK. Although I don't know that, but I think so. Okay.
So someone should be writing this down. What winner gets what? Keep this organized.
Austin Bertelson is the winner of the low angle block and the wood hinge box.
Are you writing it, Frick? Typing?
Ken's got it.
Yeah, I'm just putting it in the chat. All right, we ready? Grand prize?
Okay, his last name is spelled Bertelson, Ken.
Please contact us.
Bertelson.
Contact us, Austin.
again?
Send an email to jake@RobCosman.com. Same with the next winner. We're ready?
Okay, push it again.
Winner is
Scroll.
James Farrell.
James Farrell. Congratulations, gentlemen, and thank you for your support. This has been awesome. You guys are great. So when you see
Second one gets the chisel.
when you see the interviews next year from these guys, feel good about the fact that you helped bring them here, and just read some of the stories, read some of the reviews. Although you got to go on the website and you got to go under the October 2020. For some reason, that's where it is. So if you want to see the reviews from the guys, go to the October 2020 workshop. I know that doesn't sound right, and then down below.
Just tell them to go to the October workshop.
Go to but it says October
It
2020.
doesn't matter. Just tell them to go to the October.
But who would think to go to the
workshop.
October 2020 when this is
They
2019?
can't. They can't go to the October 2019
So
workshop.
then
All
they
right,
would
all
think-
right.
All right, okay.
Clearly, that's sensitive.
So, happy Thanksgiving for all you Americans. Hope you enjoy it. Don't eat too much
Veterans
turkey.
Day recently passed.
Veterans
And Remembrance Day.
passed. Yeah, we did say I saluted all the vets on our online workshop. We appreciate what you do, and we will see you again in 2 or 3 weeks. The weekend that we have Dave and Luther and Ken and Jake and I here making boxes, we're going to do one, and we'll take Nick up on his request to do one on boxes.
Maybe bring them down.
Hmm?
You can bring them down.
Yeah.
You can join
Nick,
us.
you'll come. Okay, guys, thank you much. Appreciate it. Thanks to everybody behind the scenes. You guys are fantastic. See you.